It was a chilly November evening in New York City. The streets were alive with the hustle and bustle of holiday shoppers, their arms laden with bags and their breath visible in the crisp air. Melania Trump, the former First Lady of the United States, was in the city for a charity event. Dressed in a sleek black coat and heels, she walked briskly down Fifth Avenue, flanked by her security detail. She was on her way to meet a friend for dinner at a nearby restaurant. As she passed a dimly lit alley, something caught her eye. A man was sitting on the ground, his back against the brick wall, a tattered blanket draped over his shoulders. His face was weathered, his beard unkempt, and his eyes held a quiet dignity despite his circumstances. Melania hesitated for a moment, her heart aching at the sight. She had always been passionate about helping those in need, and something about this man stirred her compassion. She turned to her security team. "Give me a moment, please," she said, her voice firm but kind. Her security detail exchanged uneasy glances but nodded. They knew better than to argue with her when she had that determined look in her eyes. Melania approached the man cautiously, not wanting to startle him. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. He recognized her immediately. "Mrs. Trump?" he said, his voice hoarse but respectful. "What are you doing here?" Melania knelt down so she was at eye level with him. "I could ask you the same question. It's cold out here. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" The man shook his head. "Not really. I've been on the streets for a while now. But I'm okay, ma'am. You don't have to worry about me." Melania's heart broke at his words. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "James," he replied. "James Miller." "Well, James, I'd like to help you if I can. Would you let me do that?" James hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. That's very kind of you." Melania stood up and turned to her security team. "We need to get him somewhere warm. Is there a shelter nearby?" One of the agents nodded. "There's one a few blocks away. I'll call ahead to make sure they have space." Melania turned back to James. "Would you like to come with us? We'll get you a warm meal and a place to sleep." James looked at her with tears in his eyes. I don't know what to say. Thank you." With the help of her security team, Melania escorted James to the shelter. Along the way, she learned more about his story. James had once been a successful construction worker, but a series of unfortunate events, a workplace injury, mounting medical bills, and the loss of his home had left him homeless. He had been on the streets for over a year, struggling to get back on his feet. When they arrived at the shelter, Melania made sure James was settled in. She spoke with the staff, ensuring he would have access to food, clothing, and medical care. Before she left, she handed him a card with her personal contact information. "If you need anything, James, don't hesitate to call me," she said. "I want to help you get back on your feet." James took the card with trembling hands. "Thank you, Mrs. Trump. You have no idea how much this means to me." Over the next few weeks, Melania kept in touch with James. She connected him with organizations that provided job training and housing assistance. She also used her platform to raise awareness about homelessness, sharing James's story to inspire others to help those in need. James, for his part, was determined to turn his life around. With Melania's support, he enrolled in a program to learn new skills and found temporary housing. He worked hard, never forgetting the kindness that had been shown to him. One day, Melania received a call from James. "Mrs. Trump," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "I got a job. I start next week." Melania's heart swelled with pride. "That's wonderful, James. I'm so happy for you." "I couldn't have done it without you," James said. "Thank you for believing in me." A few months later, Melania invited James to a charity event she was hosting in New York City. The event focused on addressing homelessness and providing resources for those in need. James arrived at the venue, dressed in a suit and tie, his head held high. He looked like a completely different person from the man Melania had met in the alley. When Melania saw him, she greeted him with a warm hug. "James, you look amazing. How are you?" "I'm doing great," James said, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I have a steady job, a place to live, and I'm even saving up to get my own apartment. None of this would have been possible without you." Melania smiled. "You did the hard work, James. I just gave you a little push." James shook his head. "You gave me hope. That's more than I could have ever asked for." James's story became a cornerstone of Melania's advocacy work. She continued to use her platform to raise awareness about homelessness and to support organizations that provided resources and opportunities for those in need. She often shared James's story as a reminder that everyone deserves a second chance. For James, life continued to improve. He eventually moved into his own apartment and reconnected with his family. He never forgot the kindness Melania had shown him, and he made it his mission to pay it forward. He began volunteering at the shelter where he had once stayed, helping others who were in the same position he had been in. Melania's encounter with James taught her an important lesson about the power of compassion and the impact one person can have on another's life. She realized that even small acts of kindness could make a world of difference, and she was determined to continue using her platform to help those in need. As for James, he often reflected on that cold November night when a former First Lady had stopped to help a homeless man. It was a moment that had changed his life forever, and he was eternally grateful. The story of Melania Trump and James Miller became a symbol of hope and kindness, a reminder that no matter how different our lives may seem, we are all connected by our shared humanity. And sometimes, all it takes is one act of kindness to change a life forever.